together with the Dinesh Nandini Dalmia Foundation, presented by Sri Cement Limited. We are elated to hold a physical session after about 18 months of the dreadful pandemic and the lockdown. So can I also request all of you to keep a little social distancing, since we've had a very bad period, and maybe we could just shift our chairs and be careful about how we sit. Today's session is in association with Dainik Jagran, and Prabha Khaitan Foundation is based in Kolkata, founded by late Dr. Prabha Khaitan. The foundation is dedicated to promote performing arts, culture, education, literature, gender equality, and women's empowerment. It collaborates with caregivers, committed individuals, like-minded institutions to implement cultural, educational, literary, and social welfare projects in India. Today, we are proud to have amongst us the veteran Indian journalist, Mr. Prem Prakash. Mr. Prakash has reported on major events in the Indian subcontinent from the 50s to the turn of the century. He has worked with foreign broadcasters who were the pioneers of that time. He has covered some of the most important stories of post-independence India. He was at the forefront of the coverage during the 1965 war against Pakistan, climbing Haji Pir with the Indian Army and covering the famous tank battle in Sialkot sector. He has interacted with every Prime Minister of India and interviewed many of them on camera. He is currently the chairman of ANI, India's premier multimedia news agency, which he helped set up. In conversation with him is Mr. Vikram Sood. Mr. Sood was part of India's civil services and was moved into the research and analysis service cadre. He served as the head of research and analysis wing from 2000 to 2003. Mr. Sood has been acting as an advisor to the Observer Research Foundation, an independent public policy think tank in New Delhi. He writes regularly on national security, foreign relations, and strategic issues. Before I request the audience to sit back and enjoy today's session, let me wish Mr. Prakash, on behalf of all of us, for a very happy though belated birthday. Mr. Prakash turned a young 90 this month. Can I invite Mr. Prakash up on the stage and Mr. Sood too, please?
हाँ भैया बीच में मत घूमना अपना
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming here today. And we have a special occasion, actually, not just the launch or the discussion of a book that my friend, good friend for many years has written, but also that it is his birthday week, shall we say. And there are not many who start to write a book at 89 years of age and finish it at 90. And I'm sure Mr. Prakash has another book in mind. God bless him and wish him all the best for the future. It's a marvelous book. It's history, contemporary history of the post-independence. It is also his own involvement or his presence or his contribution during this period, and the most what I like most about the book is, apart from the facts and the details, that it's written very simply. There are no convoluted paragraphs, there are no long sentences, it is short. It is Prem Prakash speaking to you. You know, so that adds a lot of, to my mind, a lot of readable value to a book. That, you know, you read it, you grasp it, you don't want to go back and again and see what has been written. So it's a marvelous book. I thought today I would concentrate on a couple of things, well, not a couple, a few things. I'll talk to you, sir, about your interactions with each Prime Minister, or as many as we can get through.
As you can do, whatever you like.
And then I'll go back. Today I want to talk to you because you spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. You did right from, I think, from the 73 onwards you were there.
Yeah, I've seen it in very happy days.
And so I would like you to talk about that also. So may I begin my Q&A and with you? And obviously Jawaharlal Nehru was your favorite. I mean, we all know that.
Whose favorite was he not?
No, I mean, nowadays we see a lot of people saying other things, but you know, what was it that seemed to go wrong even then? You know, like Jinnah sent Ispahani as his ambassador to the United States in 1947. Suave, very smart, very cultured, who knew America. We sent V.K. Krishna Menon at the height of Cold War with his acerbic tongue and he was a bit of a maverick as far as the West was concerned. In fact, I remember the Time magazine calling him the man with the red tongue. So why were we doing this? Loyalty? Naivete? Or what was it?
I think very much loyalty. They were very good friends from London onwards. And Panditji always thought that Krishna Menon was perhaps the best person who knows the West as well as he does. But he ignored the fact that at heart, Krishna Menon was something else, in the sense that he certainly wasn't tuned towards America, nor was he in tune with the West. So any person can make that kind of mistake. It was a very personal decision by him, I would say that.
Mm-hmm. He was really a one-man foreign office, wasn't he?
Oh, of course, yes. Of course, yes. He did have carried on everything, whether it was external publicity or so on. For example, take on the external publicity thing. He was the only Prime Minister that I've known who would meet the foreign press every year. He would attend their dinner. He would go there. He would interact with them. He would hold regular press conferences. How many Prime Ministers have held regular press conferences since? How many Prime Ministers have interacted with the press since? I remember very much in the initial days when the honeymoon period with the new government was over and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel restarted what was known as the Films Division, which he closed down after independence because he thought the British had used it during the war for propaganda purposes, and it had defeated Congress's campaign not to recruit the Indian people. Indian News Parade, which was known then which ran the British newsreel, it did well. Anyway, Sardar Patel restarted it, and at that point, it was suggested to reach some control on the press. Do you realize what was Panditji's response? He said, I am comfortable with an irresponsible, independent press than with a controlled press. These were his words, which I have not forgotten till today. So, which Prime Minister of India or where in the world would believe in that kind of freedom? I leave it there.
Thank you. Now, Tibet. Sardar Patel wrote that huge long letter to him saying, watch out for China. But Jawaharlal had other ideas. He was chaperoning Zhou Enlai in the Bandung conference.
It's a tragic story.
It's a tragic story.
It's you and I have discussed it in the past. It's a very tragic story. I don't know why. Somehow, it's not that Panditji didn't realize what China was up to. He knew what China was up to. He also knew that Indian Army, perhaps, I'm talking of Indian Army post-independence, it was still in good shape and could handle it, but somehow he felt that he could handle it diplomatically with China because he had espoused the cause of China not only during the independence struggle. Remember, we sent a medical mission to China during the World War II to assist the Chinese under Dr. Kotnis. So it was a big mistake. That's one of the mistakes he made. His calculation about Tibet went wrong. Remember, we also had the British left us in very good shape there. We had Maratha light infantry contingent in Xinjiang, that is today Xinjiang. What more we could have? And we had complete intelligence network, which was controlled by us. And it is that network which was still in some way intact, which helped us rescue Dalai Lama later on.
True. I mean, there was a time when Nehru had all the erudition, he had all the qualities, he was personally very charming, but still he did not get the kind of response one would expect the West to give him. It was socialism which was suspect, it was neutrality which was suspect.
That plus Jinnah had succeeded during the period that the Indian leaders were in jail to convince the Western leaders that Congress leaders were communists or oriented towards left. So West was very careful. For example, when Panditji visited USA, Harry Truman was the president. Harry Truman is said to have commented, I've never heard a communist speak so much about democracy. What more? Now, that's the...
That's the... Yes, but you know, the West itself was inclined towards Pakistan in any way. They have been like this throughout, even till date.
West, so, there is a very interesting book, Wiki, Facts Are Facts, written by Khan Wali Khan.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of research not only at the India Office Library, but into the papers of the British Foreign Office. And you'll be don't be surprised if I say that what I read in that book was that they wanted to create a country which would be a buffer between Soviet-inclined India, because Afghanistan was a front state for them. They didn't wish Soviet Union to come towards warm waters. And apart from many other things, this was a major thing responsible for creation of Pakistan.
Yeah, that's true, because if you read the India House dispatches of that period, there's a clear indication that they want at least, if nothing else, even Balochistan should be taken away from Pakistan and declared independent. Because that's all history now.
But that's where we made a huge mistake. When you talk of Balochistan, it's a huge tragedy. Because Khan of Kalat had sent his emissary to Panditji to accept Balochistan's accession.
Ghosbucks was here that day.
And Panditji turned him down. The net result, when Jinnah came to know of it, remember, he hanged him. Khan of Kalat and his people were hanged, which is a big, big tragedy and a blot, I would say, on our nation.
Do you think Jawaharlal was a closet dynast?
Jawaharlal was a?
Closet dynast?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Yes, he was fond of Indira because she looked after him.
That's
remember that. But he had indicated and chosen his successor.
Yeah, you mentioned in your book that Lal Bahadur,
he had chosen his successor, and so he wasn't. It is the weakness of Congress later on, and the Congress leaders themselves, who began to forget that they could elect another leader. They wanted to thwart Morarji Desai after Shastriji. It's a pity Shastriji didn't live long. And in their effort to thwart Morarji, they chose Indira Gandhi.
They are the ones who created the dynasty.
They are the ones who created dynasty, yes.
I
would blame them. See, and thereafter, as far as Indira Gandhi was concerned, yes, she believed in it.
Okay, tell me, why did we stop at the Krishan Ganga in 1948?
I don't know that. I don't know that. I'll be honest.
I've heard it said that his advisors told him that, Kashmir ends here, i.e. the valley.
Krishan Ganga that way. Sorry.
Yeah.
You see, it's like this. Indian army was absolutely on the way to recover. It is Sheikh Abdullah.
That's it.
It is Sheikh Abdullah, because where the ceasefire line is, beyond that begins Punjabi speaking valley. The Sheikh thought, well, I've got my Kashmir with me, because those guys were what was known as National Muslim Foundation Party. That those guys, they were opposed to Sheikh.
Okay.
And Sheikh did not want any opposition to him. If Indian Army had managed, which it was well on its way to the borders of Pakistan, and it was stopped there. Sheikh Abdullah's pressure, nobody else.
Do you think it was a good idea to have Mountbatten as the Governor General?
Not at
Considering that he was...
Not at all. It wasn't a good idea to have him, because there were a lot of things that could have been avoided.
So we were initially following a policy of good intentions.
Remember, originally the demand of Congress was for dominion status, not for
independence.
Not for total independence. Total independence came only because of Sardar Bhagat Singh. If Bhagat Singh had not raised that demand, and gone to gallows. He went to gallows on 1931, and in 1930 at Lahore Congress, Jawaharlal Nehru, when raised the flag, changed the Congress policy towards complete independence. And also during that period, if you read history, Congress had lost all support, including Gandhiji, so much so that when the train carrying Gandhiji was going towards the Karachi Congress, it was stoned on the way.
Tell me, now shall we go to the next Prime Minister?
Anyway,
you were in Hajipir.
yes.
You saw that. You sort of saw the whole thing, how we captured that. And you were in Tashkent.
I was also in Sialkot, where I
Sialkot.
narrowly escaped.
Sialkot also.
That's a funny thing. You see, everybody those days, I must tell this story to everybody. Everybody used to believe in how strong the Pakistan Air Force was with US airplanes, that they had those
F-16,
saber jets. So we were being conducted by General Sparrow. There was a small press party, and I was there at that. And General Sparrow was one of the last of the British trained senders, generals who were, outgoing. And suddenly, when a general leads the tank, there are 4 or 5 tanks escorting him. So here were 5 tanks, I think, or whatever, and suddenly 4 saber jets appeared in the sky. So everybody jumped out. There were nearby trenches, we all got into that. As far as the general is concerned, they took him under a tree, and a whole lot of troops mounted over him that he doesn't get knocked down. Now for the next 20 minutes or 25 minutes, these saber jets unleashed all their weaponry on us. Every time they would come like this, you felt, oh my God, I'm gone now. But nothing happened. And at the end of 25 minutes, not one tank was hit. At the end of 25 minutes, all that happened under the tree. General Sparrow's ADC was hit on the leg. And we all came out alive, including the general, and we all laughed at it. So I have never forgotten that these Paki claims about their air force are zilch.
No, I think the Pakistanis are scared of being burned to death.
Well,
So they throw the bomb and run away. Anyway, I was coming to Tashkent, where the famous Tashkent agreement was signed. You mentioned that at about 4 o'clock or so, you was told that it's not happening. And then suddenly it turned around and said, it's being signed. Now, you also wondered why it happened, but you must have thought about it. What was the give and what was the take in this sudden exchange? Because there was a story that Bhutto was told that night, or woken up that night. Bhutto was his foreign minister, Ayub's. He was woken up at that night and he was asked, told him, oh, that so-and-so is dead. He said, whose? Theirs or ours? So there was a surprise in the deal. There was a surprise in the passing away. There was no inquest. What actually happened?
you see, it remains a mystery. I've mentioned that in the book. I've written often.
No, I thought you might have something else off the record.
And beg your pardon?
I thought you might say something else apart from the book.
No, I've written the book. I've mentioned, but I will say this: we were Shastri ji and the. You see, those days there wasn't that kind of security as we see now. It was all very informal. For example, I used to hang around Shastriji's dacha along with N.S. Thapa of the Films Division. The two of us would just hang around there. And one day, Kosygin arrives. Kosygin holds Swaran Singh by the hand and starts walking. I started walking behind them. Who could stop me? And I heard Kosygin clearly and loudly in my ears ask Swaran, you must get this signed. It's very important for me. Sardar Swaran Singh, a great negotiator that he was, he simply replied, Your Excellency, you know, he is the leader. I can only convey your message. He will decide himself. So that shows the kind of pressure the Soviets were putting. Now remember, the reason Soviets were putting that kind of pressure, these U-2 planes used to fly from Peshawar Air Base, and Soviet Union didn't have any missile or something that time to shoot them down. And they would go spying over Central Asia, where all the Soviet missile, nuclear, space research was going on. And they didn't want that to happen. They thought if they could oblige Pakistan by getting back all the areas which Indian Army didn't wish to give, particularly Haji Pir. Having given back the Haji Pir, we are till today suffering. Most infiltration takes place via Haji Pir.
But don't we specialize in the art of giving up what we win in the battlefield? We give it up at the negotiating table. 71 we did the same thing.
You see, in
72 rather.
during Agra meet of Musharraf with Vajpayee ji, I was asked this question by somebody, and I said, listen, this has been a game of brinkmanship. Tragically, Indians, somehow, we gave up in Shimla also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, 72.
We gave up in Shimla also.
Yeah.
You see, when it comes to brinkmanship, we fear and we walk away and we give up. Whereas Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the only Prime Minister who told Musharraf, when Musharraf threatened him to going back to Pakistan, he said, how can I change the decision of a president? And Atal Bihari Vajpayee was not going to be suffering in the brinkmanship.
So, how would you rate Mrs. G's tenures?
Excellent. In many ways, it's tragic that in the second tenure, she was surrounded by a Punjabi mafia. In the first tenure, I think it was very unfortunate that the opposition...
Second term, wasn't it Kashmiri mafia?
Beg your pardon?
Kashmiris in the second term?
Punjabi mafia and Kashmiri both, but Punjabi mafia more for creating Operation Blue Star and all the rest.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Which resulted
That was the third term.
Which resulted in an assassination.
That was the third term.
The third term?
Second term was 71, 74, Sikkim, Bangladesh. Then you had all the...
No, Bangladesh was fine. Bangladesh was excellent. Yeah.
You see, even that, towards the end, before the term ended, she had to impose the emergency.
Emergency was imposed soon after.
75.
Yeah.
And 71, she had won the election, and
Yep.
then the whole thing started.
No, but the emergency was imposed in 75.
5 June.
Yeah.
And May 75, we just got Sikkim merged. And suddenly you find this precipice.
Because Sikkim, there was a problem there. Somehow, the establishment was convinced that the American lady who was with
Hope Cook
Chogyal, Hope Cook,
was CIA.
was CIA. Now, whether she was or not, only some others can tell, but that was the panic which resulted in so-called referendum.
No, but so 75, she had that crash. Now I have a what-if question for you here.
You are welcome, sir.
You know, she declared emergency, and it led to a consequence of events that we all know. supposing if she had just resigned,
You see,
and Swaran Singh or Jagjeevan Ram become interim prime minister, their re-elections are held, she wins and comes back.
no,
she
why
becomes
should
a
she?
heroine.
Why should she have resigned? I'm going to ask you that question. Because the opposition was not letting her file an appeal to the Supreme Court. That was a big problem. And meanwhile, Jayaprakash Narayan at Ramlila ground
That famous speech, yeah.
had called upon the forces and everybody else not to accept orders of the illegal government. It wasn't an illegal government. She had every right to file an appeal.
That's true.
Because after all, we are a country which is ruled by rule of law. And for the opposition not to let her do that was not right.
But then the consequences that you had of the emergency, the kinds of things that
Yeah, but
happened.
if she had resigned,
Even you lost some exquisite whiskey.
that's a different story. That's a different story.
But
You see,
know,
that story is on the lighter side. I must share this. We journalists were under very heavy pressure. And in Gulbor Park was a newly developed journalist colony. And everybody who lived there were journalists. I was the president of the colony. I had helped develop it. And a friend of mine called me. There were very good people in the administration who were tipping you off. A friend of mine called me to say that, Premji, we are coming tomorrow morning. I said, yeah, you are welcome for a long time. I haven't seen you or your wife. Come over. He said, yaar, samjha kar. We are coming tomorrow morning. Oh. So I immediately called a meeting of the members of the committee of the Gulbor Park, and I said, listen guys, now spread the word around. I know there is nothing wrong with anybody, but I don't want any journalist to be caught with any money or anything illegal. So please spread the word around. As they left, and I started looking around my house. I must confess, I still have a little weakness for whiskey, but I had more weakness for it that time. And whenever I would travel, I would bring a bottle. So I said, let me look around. Any drawer or anything I would pull, there was a bottle. And I said, oh, Mr. Prem Prakash, you are in tomorrow. So
way beyond limit.
And then apart from the bottles which I kept on one side, the other tragedy was that I had misplaced the papers of a revolver and a binocular which I was given as mementos when the Indian Army took the surrender of Pakistan Army in Bangladesh. So I called somebody, a very close relative, and I said, please, can you take all this away from me? And I'll pick it up from you
Later.
once it all gets over. I never got anything back.
Okay. The next one, I will not talk about Rajiv Gandhi. It was just a sad event.
He was a good prime minister.
Good man, but
He was a good prime minister.
he
wish,
frittered it away. He frittered away his good.
Yeah, but I wish he had won the second term. The country would have been different.
But he was just not ready for being prime minister, I thought.
Second term he was ready. But
Possibly.
if he had not been assassinated, he was ready in the second term.
You know, he had surrounded himself again with his cronies.
Not
And
that-
I remember Ramesh Thapar calling it the Babalo government.
The second term it wasn't like that. It wouldn't have been like that. Anyway,
Anyway,
it never happened.
it never happened. It's unfortunate.
Because I was close to some few things, so I can say that.
He was a very fine person as an individual,
Yes,
one
yeah.
believes so. And thereafter you had Shri V.P. Singh, who is not your favorite, I think. And so we'll not talk about. But there's one thing I wanted to check. They say that, Chandrasekhar and your other good friend, who we're very fond of, Inder Gujral, would have actually been very good prime ministers, but they never got the chance. They never had the backing or the numbers. Is that?
They both made blunders.
Yeah.
Chandrasekhar was a great leader. He should have never accepted Congress support with only 64 MPs.
Yeah.
You don't run a country of the India's size with 64 members of parliament behind you. You are asking for trouble. And sure enough, I mean, a great leader wasted. A great leader wasted. Of course, apart from many other things, one reason for his downfall was the fact that India had to mortgage gold. And in that, he didn't get full advice from Manmohan Singh. Whatever Manmohan Singh be, he didn't give him full advice. He didn't tell him that the World Bank was prepared to, that he did not mortgage gold or whatever, that if you carry out the reforms, we could give you loan. He didn't tell him that.
Why?
Ask Manmohan Singh.
Guess. Anyway, you've been all over the world with different prime ministers, from Beijing to DC to wherever else, from Indonesia. But and you also went to Afghanistan very early in your career, shall we say 73, I think. 73 was the first time you went.
I started there. Well, we had coverage of Afghanistan. My younger brother went there at that time in 1956, when Panditji went there.
Okay.
And King Zahid Shah was there. And the interesting thing that happened that day, that the palace ladies joined the banquet, gave up the burqa and said, India is brother country and our brother is coming, so there is no parda with the brother. So our relations with Afghanistan always were such close. And you see, Kabul was a different place. Overall, Afghanistan is a different place.
Even Mazar and Herat were really different.
Mazar, Herat, Jalalabad, all the cities had undergone quite a change. But then remember, in the cities, the tribal loyalties disappear.
Yeah.
Whereas they continue in the clans. There is a famous Pashto saying that there is a king after every hill. Because the tribal leader is like a king over his tribe.
The other saying is that me against my brother, me and my brother against my cousins, me, my brother and my cousins against the tribe, and so it goes on, me and my clan against the other clan,
Yes.
and me and my country against the rest. It goes up to that. Now today we have Afghanistan in this turmoil, and we also have the extremely, I think it's a very frightening prospect of the consequences that a superpower walks out, handing over to the very people it promised to crush. And it goes out as an exit policy. It is not even a peace treaty. It is not even an agreement of any sort. It is just, I want to get the hell out of here. I don't care what happens. What does it mean for the rest of us?
Vicky, again, it's a very sad story. It's tragic.
Yeah.
It's something that's not done. You spend 20 years, you change the face of cities. You want to recognize Kabul the way it is today. It's like so well developed. Herat, or all these places. You do all that, and then you don't plan any withdrawal. And why do you do this suddenly? And they prepared the Afghan army, but in what way? It was not an Afghan national army. It didn't owe allegiance to whoever was the president. These so-called presidents, whether it's Karzai or Ghani, they are NGO leaders.
Yeah.
They haven't risen from amongst the people of Afghanistan. They are not like the last well-known leader, Najibullah, who after the Soviet withdrawal, and the same Afghan army, with limited resources, kept Pakistan
At bay, yes.
at bay with the whole lot of American support.
Yeah.
And this here was an American toy, really. And in any case, I don't wish to sound as I'm biased against the US, but US has never been a true ally of any country.
No, it's
It's,
only allies itself.
Yeah, for Biden, it was important that he carries out his promise to his electorate that he's withdrawing. He withdrew without caring for any consequences for thousands of people who are working for you. Come on. You don't, I'll just give you one example. My last coverage in Afghanistan was when there were 8 young people from ANI traveling there. And everybody was against me traveling there because I was old in a way, but I was very senior, pretty senior. And I said, no, I can't allow 8 of my people to be risked. I know Afghanistan like the backside of my hand. I went there with them. I used to go for satellite transmission myself every day and go through the city. I have mentioned in the book where I would survive the crossfire. I wasn't going to let any of my young people do that because they didn't know anything about it. I knew how to, or my driver knew how to manipulate. So we did that. But look at this. A country like US junking its people who have helped them. And what's going to happen to them? They are not bothered. It's very sad. And I really hope we are developing strategic relations with them, that we are careful.
I think we have to go in for only transactional resolution.
Absolutely. We should be very careful.
Cannot go in for strategic relationships anymore.
This because I get very afraid of the word strategic.
Just look at this. Premji, on the 12th of August, the US says it will be 3 months or maybe several months before the Taliban can reach Kabul. This is their intelligence report. On the 14th of August, they are there. Okay. There is a bomb attack, and they are the very first people to say it was done by IS. They are creating a narrative to get Taliban off the hook. Therefore, they get the Taliban's mentors or patrons off the hook. And then you leave that armament behind. What does it mean for us?
What happened in Doha, I wouldn't know. What happened in Doha, I wouldn't know. How the negotiations were carried on, who was carrying it out. But I'll tell you an interesting story about American attitude. In Bangladesh, when Indian Army was marching in, at some places you could virtually see, Pakistanis could see that we were outflanking them. They were not firing at us. or they were letting us go through. Years later, I was in Washington, D.C. My son was studying there, and his professor, some gentleman by the name of Sidney Sobers, had checked his document on foreign policy, his paper, and said, "You are wrong." He said, "No, my father is here." So I said, "I'd like to meet him." So I met this Mr. Sidney Sobers, who had been chargé d'affaires of Pakistan, of US in Pakistan. I asked him this question: how come you guys surrendered East Pakistan, which is a riverine country, just like that? It's a riverine country.
Yep.
I mean, we were carrying huge convoys to build quick bridges. We didn't have to use any. We happily marched in. So his reply was, "Prem, my officers went to Lahore." Because we raised this question with the Pakistan Armed Forces, and they said, "Send your people and we'll show them." He said, our people went there. It seemed they simply wined and dined them in Lahore. I won't tell you more what he said. And told them that, "Don't worry, we'll capture Amritsar. We'll go on to Bias River." And of course, Amritsar is a holy city of Sikhs. In the Security Council, we will force them to, we'll tell them we'll vacate all this, you vacate East Pakistan. I said, "Aren't you naive?" I asked him. That did you expect that Indians would be so naive that they would ignore the Western defenses? He had no reply. So that answers your question, sir.
So can we make this the last and then...
Yeah, I think I was just going to do that, the last question, and then we give the floor. My last question was really, what is the difference between journalism when you started and journalism today?
There were no schools for journalism. There was no colleges as such. There were no so-called institutions which trained these youngsters with promises of big jobs, mislead them in many ways, and as they pass out, tell them that they're as good as the editors. Whereas when I started, you had to work your way up. You were told to study history, economics, everything. And I was both a cameraman and a reporter. So I had that great interest. I would keep my camera work up to the mark and so on, but also study the things. So we worked our way up. We would, and most important, go to the location. Go to the location.
Yeah.
You can't sit back and get a source and report.
Yeah.
Today, I'm afraid it's a different world. And we have been dominated now by fake news so much.
Yeah. We don't know what
It's
is true,
tragic.
what is not true, and that's the pity.
Well,
Thank you very much, and I'll just say, we were talking about Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan is now going to be a jihad central for the next 20 years.
I hope not. I hope
Just
not.
look at the number of people who are there. And the Pakistanis know only one thing, jihad and India. It's not a fight about Afghanistan.
Would it
It's a
not
fight-
eat up Pakistan?
Sorry?
Would it not eat up Pakistan itself?
That's not their consideration. That's not what they think.
Okay.
It's maybe strategic depth which is actually becoming
They
deep well.
won't get strategic depth in Afghanistan.
It's a deep well, but that's not what they think.
You see,
they think they've got us.
Whatever the Afghan government, Vicky, tell me, will they give up their demand on Peshawar? And
No.
because remember, Peshawar was the winter capital of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And Western historians won't tell you that the only time in history when Afghans have been subdued was by Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And Ranjit Singh, in order to secure the borders of Punjab, not only took away, annexed Peshawar Valley, he annexed Khyber Pass, he took the borders of Punjab to the plains of Afghanistan at Torkham, facing Jalalabad city. That's how Indian borders became secure.
Thank you very much, Premji, for all your contribution for all the thoughts that you've given us, and it's been wonderful talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
Vicky. It's
Always
always
wonderful
thank you,
talking to
Vicky. Thank you.
And now we have a little time for a few questions, maybe. So I'll request one by one, and you take one question at a time, sir?
Do le lo te.
No, I mean one at a time or three together.
No, one at a time.
One at a time. Right, ma'am.
Sir, I want to ask you that today social media has become a very powerful platform for spreading all kinds of news. You were talking about fake news also. And actually, Indian audience or Indian people at home aren't mature enough to really get into these kind of platforms where all kinds of news is spread. There's trolling, there's fake news, plus on the flip side from there's freedom of speech, and yet people are thrown behind bars if they say something on social media. So it's a double-edged sword. I want you to give me your opinion about these platforms.
You see, I fully agree with you that all kinds of things are happening. There's a lot of flip side to it. Because suddenly everyone in the street has become a journalist, is telling you what's going on. I mean, they are posting video, and sometimes those videos are totally fakes. I get corrected all the time by my daughter-in-law. When I point out some video to her, and she is able to quickly research and say, this is fake. So what do? I mean, those who are being hauled up are the ones who are taking it a bit too far, threatening the national security. And that is something we Indians should be very... I mean, I'm not for a moment agreeing with certain policies of the government, but what I'm trying to point out is that we in India should realize what is happening around us and in the world. And it's our country, and we got to protect it. We should be very careful about what is written and what is mentioned in the social media like that.
I was talking about the flip side to it.
Flip side.
That it's so powerful that the other day I put in a tweet about a girl being raped. We have a rape activist also here in Yogita. So and they caught the man. The police had to reply and they caught the man. So the flip side is that it is a powerful medium to actually bring crime into focus and see the justice.
Welcome to do that. Welcome to do that. Welcome to do that. It's like this. You know, I didn't know that till yesterday. I read that Delhi has the largest number of CCTVs per square mile. That's why the police is able to catch culprits very quickly now rather than before. So what was known as the Big Brother is watching, Big Brother is watching all over Delhi. Yes.
You have covered the war zones as you were discussing. An army officer carries a weapon and a gun. If you pick up from the mind, like they know what they are getting into. As a journalist, what is the motivation going just with your camera? And what there is something to drive you, and what is the feeling? I mean, you just described and we got goosebumps.
You see, I can only give you that by my personal experience. Myself and my colleague Mr. Durgadas Chatterjee in Calcutta, we would go to Benapole, which is the border outpost between East Pakistan and India, and we would sit there, cover, and we would watch these foreign teams go in and come back, and we would think, both of us, oh my God, we have again been beaten. But we didn't realize that from Benapole they were really turning around, and there was this immigration post and so on, and they were turned back. But the other thing is, a reporter can sit in Calcutta and write the story. As far as I was concerned, if I had to report on what's going on in East Pakistan, I have to go there. Even though I was told by my editors that a dead Prem Prakash is of no use to them, which can be true. A dead Prem Prakash would be of no use to them. But there is no escape from it. If you are conscious, you have to take that's a person's own decision. And it was my decision and my colleague late Durgadas Chatterjee's decision that we crossed the border. That's our first crossing toward Jessore. And we reached halfway. I was a Punjabi and he's a Bengali. Now, I have to keep quiet because for people in East Pakistan or Bangladesh, at that time, any Punjabi is a Punjabi. We were in a cafe and we heard that they were all listening to All India Radio. So we realized they are all friends. We managed to get a jeep and we went to Jessore, and as I neared there, lot of dead bodies. This had happened the day before, on the left side there was a barricade. Anyway, we went straight ahead. Being an Indian reporter and conscious of the fact that my coverages were going abroad and they could be challenged by somebody, I went to Jessore railway station to identify the location. Then we managed to come back. So that's the motivation. Yeah, it's your own risk. The bosses can tell you, don't take it, but there is no way out. I survived. When I came back to the border, there was a officer from the Fort William, an intelligence officer. He asked me, where have you been? I said, we've just been to Jessore. He laughed at it. I said, don't be silly. I explained to him the tri-junction, and he looked aghast and he said, you have been lucky. That barricade you saw was Pakistan Army's barricade. You are just lucky that they didn't fire on you, or maybe they were in their namaz or something. So this happens. It's tragic that what happened with our colleague from Reuters. I mentioned about that because I was covering for Viz News, which used to be Reuters television later on.
Last question.
Yes, please.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking. Yes.
I want to ask you something, sir.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is more competent to answer the question that I'm going to ask you.
I may be incompetent.
Because I don't think anybody has interacted so closely with all the prime ministers that we've had. So I want to ask you two things. One is a gossipy question. Is there any kind of gossip that you're aware of any of them, which you haven't shared in your book?
Loads.
We would be delighted to hear that.
I'm not going to tell you that.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm not going to tell you that.
And the second, which
Because I'll tell you what, when I was accredited and I started going to the Prime Minister's house, Jawaharlal Nehru's house, my father, who was a very conservative, grand old man, he called me aside and he said, देखो बेटा, अब तुम जा रहे हो बड़े आदमी के घर. बड़े आदमियों की बड़ी बातें होती हैं. आंख से देखते नहीं, कान से सुनते नहीं. And that was my principle. I saw, I didn't see. I heard, I didn't hear. So that's
Right.
it.
So I will just reword it into a tamer question. That who was the most challenging out of all the prime ministers? Challenging in terms emotionally and draining, I would say, that you interacted with. And if you could tell us an incident about that.
I was happy with practically all of them. But if you can ask my colleagues, the most challenging is the one at present.
Yes, yes, well done, sir.
Because I haven't
You're on
interacted
record,
with him.
isn't it?
I haven't interacted with him. I mean, he hasn't held a press conference.
Yeah.
He hasn't held a press conference.
So that's also a
So what do I
record of
do?
sorts.
So what do they do?
He's his own press, sir.
Right. Thank you, sir, for a very engaging afternoon.
Just a minute.
Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes, yes, Ajay.
Sir, you talked very fondly of Jawaharlal Nehru.
Yes.
What we had heard from the records is that America and Europe kept telling Nehru when he went there, when they were here, to accept the United Nations Security Council seats. And on 2 occasions he said no, and he said give it time. And he ordered the relation between India and China, yet he forced them to force China to become the Security Council member. And today we are just crawling on the feet and trying to seek a representation in the Security Council.
The answer I can give you is that discussions when the Security Council and UN was being formed took place in San Francisco. India was a colony at that time. India was not free. And the decision to go with China was taken at that time. Later on, yes. When two China policy came about and America refused to recognize the communist China and continued to recognize Kuomintang China, they kept on telling us, but then we didn't do it because we knew that real China is Mao's China. And we were already in problems in Tibet. Should we have invited more problems? So that decision is left to the Prime Minister. I'm only an observer. I can't say more than that.
Anybody else? Before I end the evening and say thank you to all of you, can I request my friend Mr. Harshadewar, environmentalist, animal rights activist, educationist, to please come forward and present our little tokens to the chief guests.
We are getting a token also.
Just छोटा सा सा आपने हमारी बात का जवाब नहीं दिया पर हम तो आपको देंगे ना
मैं
ऑनर
तो
करेंगे
मैं आपकी बात का just जवाब दूं।
एक एक करके दे दो हर्ष फर्स्ट टू मिस्टर प्रेम प्रकाश
Oh, my favorite, Lord Ganesh.
and the second to Mr. Sood.
Very nice. Thank you.
Glad you like it.
Sorry, I accepted it sitting down because
Please,
standing would have been a
sir,
problem.
please. Thank you, Harsh. And so the evening, which has been the first of our physical sessions after COVID, comes to an end. I wish we could have stretched it longer because I didn't want you to stop talking. And you, sir, thank God you were asking him questions and it wasn't me.
Yeah.
On behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation and the Dinesh Nandini Dalmia Foundation, I thank the author, the grand birthday boy, Mr. Prem Prakash, and the erudite, well-informed, extremely, extremely bright, Mr. Vikram Sood, for this invigoration session. I also thank our presenters, Shri Cement Limited, our media associates, Dainik Jagran, and all of you friends a big thank you to you for being here and making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is your speech also on the record?
Thankfully,
I like the last few words.
I just need you to sign a book form. वो blue वाला दे दो मुझे. Kamal. You can get them. All of you can please take a copy of the book, and if you would like have.
Sir, can I get my book signed?
वो मुझे वो blue वाला दे दो और पेन भी दे दो.
It's really solid. Solid.
गोल्ड नहीं है सर. ऐसा होना चाहिए था कि गोल्ड का होता.
No.
Just a little note to ask for your thoughts on the program.